Racist gate agent denied black woman's ticket, then learned she owned the entire airline. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Step back, ma'am. This line is for premium passengers only. The gate agent's voice sliced through the air, sharp enough to turn heads. Her tone wasn't procedural, it was personal. You could hear it, feel it, see it in the way her lips tightened like she'd just tasted something sour. At gate 47, 8:02 a.m., the morning hum of departures froze. The black woman standing in front of her didn't argue. She simply held out her boarding pass first class, Flight 203 to New York, and waited. The agent didn't even look. We both know that's not real. Her name tag read times Megan asterisk, but everyone nearby would later remember her as the woman who tried to erase someone with a sentence. The woman's name was Naomi Brooks. Calm eyes, tan coat, hair pulled back not for style, for focus. And in less than 10 minutes, Megan would regret every word that just left her mouth. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Naomi. The gate agent snatched the boarding pass from her hand, holding it up like evidence. Fake prints, bad ink, I've seen this scam before. Her coworker, a young man in a navy blazer, leaned over. She doesn't look like first-class material, he whispered, not quietly enough. A few travelers glanced up from their phones, catching the tension but not daring to interfere. Naomi's voice stayed low, smooth, deliberate. Run my name. Megan scoffed. Sweetheart, the system's smarter than that. She turned to the monitor, typing with exaggerated speed, then frowned. The name times Naomi Brooks times flashed green verified. Still, she shook her head. System glitch. Happens when people use stolen IDs. Naomi didn't blink. This wasn't the first time her existence had been called a mistake. She'd seen this scene before in a lobby, at a counter, in a boardroom where her credentials were questioned before her competence. She exhaled slowly, every breath measured. You could just check the manifest, she said. Or, Megan shot back, you could stop pretending. A man in a business suit behind Naomi muttered, unbelievable. Another woman whispered, this is getting ugly. Naomi turned slightly, scanning the faces, some curious, some embarrassed, all complicit in silence. Her phone buzzed once in her coat pocket. A message from Carla. Asterisk, everything's set. Protocol 7 ready. Asterisk, Naomi didn't move yet. She looked back at the gate agent who was now waving for security. Escort her out, Megan said, already convinced she was right. But Naomi's voice cut through the noise, calm as gravity. You might want to pause that order, Megan smirked. Why? You think someone's going to save you? Naomi tilted her head just slightly, her tone steady as a verdict. No, I'm the one who signs your paycheck. The crowd stilled, confusion rippling like static through the gate. The agent froze, halfway between arrogance and realization. Naomi reached into her bag, not for a phone, but for a badge sleek, matte black, engraved with gold. Asterisk, asterisk, Aerolux Holdings, Chief Executive Officer, asterisk, asterisk. The silence that followed wasn't peace. It was judgment finding its mark. For a moment, the entire gate stood still. Even the low hum of the terminal air conditioning seemed to fade. Megan's smirk faltered, the color draining from her face as the badge's golden emblem caught the light. Naomi did not move. She did not raise her voice. She simply said, now that we understand each other, return my boarding pass. The young man beside Megan fumbled with the keyboard, pretending to recheck the system. There must be a mistake, he muttered, his voice trembling under the weight of humiliation. Megan tried to recover her composure, straightening her blazer like armor. Anyone can print a badge, ma'am, she said, tone brittle, desperate. Naomi met her eyes with calm precision. Anyone can, but only one of us has her name engraved on the fleet. A murmur rippled through the line. Passengers began whispering. Phones lifted discreetly. The man in the gray suit from earlier leaned toward another traveler and said quietly, she owns the airline. I recognize her from Forbes. Megan's jaw clenched. She turned sharply to the security guard now standing by, a tall man in his 40s with a stoic expression. Remove her until we can verify, she ordered. But the guard hesitated. He had seen enough to sense the truth. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "I think we should slow down." Naomi's gaze shifted to him briefly, calm but commanding. "No need. I am quite capable of handling this." She tapped her earpiece once. "Carla, confirm public verification," she said. Carla's voice came through steady, professional, and amplified just enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Confirmed, Miss Brooks. Your ID, ownership records, and shareholder credentials are live across Aerolux's internal network. The board has been notified of the incident at Gate 47. Megan froze. Her lips parted, but no sound followed. The silence was brutal. Naomi took a measured breath, the kind that comes from years of learning when to speak and when to let others hear themselves fail. "This," she said evenly, "is not about a ticket. It is about how you decided who deserves to hold one." Her words hung in the air, sharp as glass. The young man behind the counter swallowed hard and whispered, "I am sorry, Miss Brooks." Naomi nodded once. "You will be." She stepped forward, retrieving her boarding pass from his trembling hand. Megan tried to interrupt, voice cracking. "Wait, please, this is all a misunderstanding." Naomi looked at her, unflinching. "No, Miss Megan, this is clarity, and clarity is expensive." Carla's voice echoed again, calm but final. "Miss Brooks, the gate's security footage is being archived. Legal will handle this internally. Would you like me to initiate compliance protocol?" Naomi glanced at the growing crowd of witnesses, then replied, "Yes, begin Protocol 8. Include all recorded language and staff interactions." Megan's knees seemed to weaken as the reality set in. The guard took a subtle step back, no longer sure who was being protected. Naomi turned toward the passengers, her tone softer now. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. Aerolux thanks you for your patience. We value every traveler equally, regardless of how they look walking to this gate." A few claps broke the tension, hesitant at first, then stronger. Somewhere near the back, someone whispered, "That is leadership." Naomi did not smile. She simply walked through the gate scanner as the machine beeped a flawless green, the sound crisp and final. Behind her, Megan's headset crackled with the incoming voice of an executive she did not yet know by name but soon would. "This is headquarters," it said coldly. "Megan, step away from the desk." The moment Naomi crossed the gate scanner, the terminal erupted in whispers. Phones lifted higher, screens glowing like judgment. Megan stood behind the counter frozen, headset still buzzing with commands she could no longer process. "Megan," the voice repeated firmly, "step away from the desk." Her hand trembled as she removed the headset. The security guard, uncertain and suddenly deferential, shifted his stance. Naomi walked a few paces down the jet bridge, her heels clicking softly against the metal floor. Then she stopped. The sound of authority carried more power than volume. "Carla," she said through her earpiece, "open an internal channel. Let the board listen." "You are live," Carla replied instantly. Naomi turned around and faced the gate. Through the glass partition, passengers could still see her. Megan's face was pale, the young male attendant beside her already on his phone, whispering in panic. Naomi's voice was calm, cold, absolute. "Megan, look at me." The agent hesitated, eyes darting to the passenger's recording. "When you looked at me earlier, you saw what you wanted to see," Naomi continued, her tone steady. "You saw skin and simplicity and decided that was lesser. You forgot that professionalism does not come in colors." Megan's lips parted, but no sound came out. The passengers were silent now, transfixed. "You did not just embarrass a client," Naomi said. "You disrespected the woman who signs your performance evaluations, funds your training, and writes the policy you chose to ignore." Megan's voice cracked. I did not know who you were." Naomi took a step forward, every word deliberate. "You should not have to know who someone is to treat them with respect." Carla's voice came through again, quieter this time, as if narrating the inevitable. "Miss Brooks, the board has authorized immediate suspension pending review for both employees involved." Naomi nodded once. "Execute it." Megan's access badge beeped red, a soft digital tone that carried like thunder. The young man's terminal logged out mid-sentence. Both froze, realization hitting harder than any reprimand. The security guard lowered his head slightly, as though in silent apology. Naomi exhaled slowly. "Send them home with their dignity intact," she said. "Let their lesson be enough for today," Carla confirmed. "Understood." Then Naomi turned back to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, your flight will continue on time. Thank you for your patience." The passengers began to applaud. not in mockery but in quiet reverence. A woman near the front called out, "Ma'am, you handled that with grace." Naomi met her eyes and replied simply, "Dignity is not a performance, it is a choice." She stepped further into the jet bridge, the applause fading behind her. For a brief moment, she let herself breathe. Every confrontation like this reminded her of being 23, standing in a lobby where they had called her unqualified, too ambitious, too young, too black. She had learned then that silence could be more powerful than shouting when it came from someone who had earned her voice. As she reached the aircraft door, the captain stood waiting, clearly briefed on what had happened. "Welcome aboard, Miss Brooks," he said respectfully. "Your seat is ready." Naomi nodded once. "Thank you, Captain. Let us get everyone home." She entered the cabin, composed, collected, but her mind was already 10 steps ahead. She knew the real reckoning would not end here. It was only beginning. As Naomi entered the cabin, every pair of eyes turned toward her. The flight attendants froze for a split second before recognition sparked. Whispers rippled through the aisle like a rising tide. "That is her," someone murmured. "The owner." Naomi did not acknowledge the stares. She moved with composed precision, her steps deliberate, her posture steady. The first-class section gleamed under soft cabin lighting, but beneath the calm veneer, tension still lingered from the chaos at the gate. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit rose halfway from his seat as she passed. "Miss Brooks," he said quietly, "I saw what happened out there. I am sorry you had to deal with that." Naomi met his gaze with a brief nod. "You do not have to apologize for someone else's ignorance," she replied evenly, "but you can help by not pretending it does not exist." He sank back into his seat, thoughtful, chastened. As she reached seat 2A, the lead attendant, a woman named Hannah, stepped forward with an apologetic smile that barely hid her nerves. "Welcome aboard, Miss Brooks," she said. "Can I offer you anything before takeoff?" Naomi's voice was polite but cool. "Yes, transparency. Was your crew aware of what happened at the gate?" Hannah hesitated, eyes darting toward the galley. "We heard some of it over the intercom, but we were told it was under control." Naomi's expression did not change. It was not under control. It was under surveillance. She sat down and placed her tablet case on the small table in front of her. "Please notify the captain that I will be reviewing crew conduct during the flight. There will be no further incidents." Hannah nodded quickly, her composure cracking. "Understood, ma'am." Naomi leaned back in her seat, exhaling slowly. For a moment, she allowed herself to look out the window. The tarmac below was alive with motion baggage carts, fuel trucks, and distant workers moving in rhythm, unaware that a quiet revolution had just begun at Gate 47. Carla's voice came softly through her earpiece. "Miss Brooks, public chatter is already trending. Footage from passengers is circulating under the tag number Gate 47. Corporate Communications is drafting a statement, but they want your input before release." Naomi sighed. "Tell them to hold. We do not make statements. We make change." "Understood," Carla said. "Also, the CEO of Airlux Europe has requested a private meeting after landing." Naomi gave a faint, almost weary smile. "He probably wants to make sure the news cycle does not swallow his division. Schedule it." The engines began to hum as the aircraft prepared for departure. A child in row 4 peeked curiously through the seat gap, whispering to his mother, "Mom, is that lady famous?" The mother smiled faintly. "More than famous," she said softly. "She is the boss." Naomi caught the words and looked ahead, the corners of her mouth barely curving. Then her expression settled again into composure. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to extend a special welcome to Miss Naomi Brooks, CEO of Airlux Holdings, traveling with us today. We thank you for choosing to fly with your own airline." The cabin broke into quiet applause, respectful, unsure. Naomi's gaze drifted to the aisle where Hannah stood, hands clasped, eyes wide with realization that this flight had just turned into history. Naomi spoke softly, almost to herself. "Let us make this flight count." The seatbelt light chimed. The plane began to roll forward. Outside, dawn light shimmered across the wings, and somewhere between the engine's roar and the silence of vindication, Naomi Brooks felt the weight of every black traveler who had ever been told, "You do not belong here," finally begin to lift. The aircraft lifted into the sky with a steady roar, the cabin lights dimming to a soft glow. Naomi sat motionless in seat 2A, her gaze fixed on the clouds outside as the world below shrank into distance. But her mind was not above the clouds. It was back at Gate 47, replaying every word, every pause, every stare that had once tried to shrink her. Carla's voice broke the silence in her earpiece, calm as ever. "Miss Brooks, I have confirmation from corporate. The gate agent and her assistant have been suspended pending investigation. Public relations is standing by for your final direction." Naomi's voice was low but firm. "There will be no press release. We do not manage racism with headlines. We manage it with reform." Carla hesitated for a moment. "Understood. Would you like me to initiate the internal audit across all airport divisions?" Naomi took a slow breath, her reflection faint against the window. "Yes. Begin immediately. And tell them this time we are not just reviewing behavior. We are auditing culture." Her words landed with quiet weight. Across the aisle, Hannah, the lead flight attendant, approached carefully, holding a tablet. "Miss Brooks, the captain would like to know if you would prefer to remain private during the flight or if you would like to address the cabin directly. There has been a lot of talk among the passengers." Naomi looked at her calmly. "I will address them before we land. For now, focus on service. Treat them as if every seat belongs to me, because in a way it does." Hannah nodded, visibly humbled, and returned to the galley. Naomi leaned back and closed her eyes briefly, and in that darkness came a memory. She was 19 again, standing in line for her first job interview at a regional airline. The recruiter had looked her up and down and said, "You have the qualifications, but you do not have the image." That moment had burned into her like a brand, a quiet promise that one day she would redefine what that image meant. The hum of the engines seemed to sync with her heartbeat. When she opened her eyes again, the cabin was calm, but her phone screen buzzed with new notifications. Carla's voice returned. "Miss Brooks, internal channels are lighting up. Other employees are sharing similar experiences. One attendant from Chicago base just submitted a report saying she was reprimanded last month for defending a black passenger in first class." Naomi's tone sharpened slightly. "Forward me her name. She will not be reprimanded again. She will be promoted." A pause, then Carla's quiet approval. "Already in progress." Naomi turned her head slightly, scanning the cabin. The same faces that had watched her walk past in silence were now watching with quiet respect. She could feel it, not fame, not fear, but recognition. Not of who she was, but of what she represented. Hannah returned once more, this time with a small note in her trembling hand. "A passenger in economy asked me to give you this," she said softly. Naomi unfolded the paper. The handwriting was uneven, written in blue pen. "Thank you for standing up. My daughter wants to be a pilot. Now I can tell her she can be anything." Naomi stared at the note for a long moment before folding it carefully and placing it in her jacket pocket. "Carla," she said, voice quieter now, "remind me to find that passenger after the flight. I want her and her daughter on our mentorship list." "Of course," Carla replied. Naomi looked out the window again, the morning sun catching the edge of the wing, painting the sky in gold. For the first time that day, she smiled not because justice had been served, but because it had finally been seen. The flight had been in the air for just over an hour when the calm broke again. A quiet knock on Naomi's shoulder made her look up. It was Hannah, the lead attendant, her face drawn tight with hesitation. "Miss Brooks," she whispered, "there is a situation in the back. A passenger in economy is being questioned by one of the junior attendants." "It sounds familiar." Naomi set her tablet down slowly. "Define familiar." Hannah's eyes shifted. The attendant accused her of sitting in the wrong seat. She is a black woman traveling with her teenage son. The ticket scanned correctly, but the attendant is insisting it was a system glitch. Naomi's tone cooled instantly. "Seat number." "Row 22, seat A and B," Hannah replied. Naomi stood without a word, adjusting her jacket. The cabin grew quiet as she began to walk down the aisle. Every head turned, the energy shifting as passengers realized who was moving past them. By the time she reached the economy section, the scene was already unfolding like a mirror of her morning. The young attendant stood rigid, arms crossed, while the passenger, a woman in her late 30s wearing a denim jacket, clutched her son's hand. "I told you," the attendant said sharply, "these seats are not assigned to you. Security will verify when we land." The woman tried to speak, her voice trembling. "We booked together. The confirmation is on my phone," the attendant snapped. "Phones can be faked." Naomi stopped 2 rows away. "Enough." The word cut through the noise like a gavel. The attendant froze, her face draining of color as she turned. Naomi's presence filled the narrow aisle like gravity itself. "Name," Naomi said calmly. "Evelyn, ma'am," the attendant stammered. "Evelyn," Naomi repeated, her tone measured. deliberate. Do you know who I am? Evelyn swallowed hard. Yes, Miss Brooks. Then you know that every policy you follow has my name on it, Naomi said. Show me the passenger's record. Evelyn fumbled with the handheld scanner, her hands shaking. The screen flashed green verified. Naomi raised an eyebrow. So the system was correct. It is your bias that glitched. The words landed heavy. The mother exhaled in visible relief, tears welling in her eyes. Her son stared wide-eyed at Naomi as if watching something impossible become real. You should never have to defend your right to sit, Naomi said to her gently. Not in my company, not anywhere. She turned back to Evelyn. You owe this woman an apology. Evelyn's voice cracked. I am sorry, ma'am. Naomi's gaze hardened. You are not apologizing to me. You are apologizing to her. Evelyn faced the passenger, voice trembling. I am so sorry, ma'am. I was wrong. Naomi nodded once. You will receive retraining before your next flight, and you will write a full report on why you reacted the way you did. Not to justify it, but to understand it. Evelyn nodded, fighting tears. Naomi looked at the woman and her son once more. Enjoy your flight, she said softly. You belong here. As Naomi turned back toward the front, the cabin broke into quiet applause. It was not loud, not performative, just honest, like air finally being let back into the room. When she returned to her seat, Carla's voice came through her earpiece. We saw the footage, Miss Brooks. Someone filmed it. Naomi closed her eyes briefly. Good, let them see it. Change does not begin in silence. She glanced out the window, watching the endless blue horizon. For Naomi Brooks, the altitude was more than altitude. It was justice rising, mile by mile. The cabin settled into an uneasy quiet after Naomi's intervention. The hum of the engines returned like a heartbeat trying to steady itself after a shock. Naomi sat back down in seat 2A, but her mind did not rest. Carla's voice came through softly in her earpiece again. Miss Brooks, the clip of you confronting the attendant has already reached 100,000 views across social platforms. Comments are pouring in. Some are praising your composure. Others are asking how an airline with your name on it allowed this to happen twice in a single day. Naomi's fingers tapped lightly against the armrest. Tell them the truth, she said. We built policies. We did not build empathy. And now we will. Carla was silent for a moment before replying, Understood. The board will want to know your next move. Naomi's eyes flicked toward the front of the cabin where Hannah stood discreetly watching her. My next move is already happening. Hannah approached cautiously, leaning close so only Naomi could hear. Miss Brooks, the passenger you helped earlier, she asked if she could thank you personally after landing. Naomi nodded. Of course. See that she and her son are escorted to the VIP lounge when we arrive. And tell the crew I will address everyone before disembarkation. Hannah smiled faintly, her expression a mix of fear and admiration. Yes, ma'am. Naomi opened her tablet and scrolled through internal reports streaming in from Carla. Dozens of employee messages flooded the screen. Some described similar discrimination incidents. Others offered apologies, admissions, and pleas for reform. She read them in silence, her jaw tight. For every story of courage, there were two of silence. Carla, Naomi said quietly, how many of these complaints were ever escalated to me? Carla hesitated. Less than 10%, ma'am. Most were filtered through regional managers. Naomi's voice hardened. Then the system is broken at the top, not the bottom. I want every regional director in a live meeting tonight. No excuses. No proxies. Yes, ma'am, Carla replied. The captain's voice came over the intercom announcing turbulence ahead, but Naomi barely noticed. Her focus had turned inward. She thought of her grandmother who had been denied boarding decades ago because the airline had claimed they overbooked. She had never flown again. Naomi had built Aerolux to change that story, but bias had found new disguises, polite, procedural, professional. It hid behind protocol. It spoke with smiles. Naomi's reflection stared back at her in the window. Not anymore, she whispered. The plane shook slightly, and a few passengers gasped. Naomi barely blinked. Miss Brooks, Carla said. Public relations suggests you make a statement before landing. Naomi shook her head even though Carla could not see her. No. Let the action speak first. Announce the new equity initiative after the crew meeting. Include mandatory verbal conduct audits for all frontline employees. Understood, Carla said, her tone shifting from assistant to ally. You are making history today. Naomi's response was soft but resolute. No, Carla, we are correcting it. Outside, the clouds thinned. revealing streaks of gold over the horizon. The captain's voice returned, calmer now. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have cleared the turbulence. We are beginning our descent." Naomi looked down at the folded note still tucked in her pocket, the one written by the mother in row 22. She unfolded it again, reading the line that had struck her most. Asterisk. "Now I can tell my daughter she can be anything. Asterisk." She closed her eyes, holding on to that sentence as if it were an oath. "Carla," she said quietly, "make sure this story does not end in applause. Make sure it ends in accountability." "Yes, Miss Brooks," Carla said. Naomi exhaled, steady and unshaken. The plane descended through layers of light, and with it the weight of silence began to fall away. The plane touched down smoothly, the wheels kissing the runway with a low hum. A soft murmur spread through the cabin as passengers unbuckled, still aware they had witnessed something unusual, something that would echo long after the seatbelt sign turned off. Naomi remained seated, composed as ever. Her phone buzzed with incoming updates. Carla's voice came through in her ear. "Miss Brooks, we are on the ground. Media outlets have already picked up both incidents. They are calling it the Gate 47 flight." Naomi's eyes stayed on the forward bulkhead. "Then let them call it that. Let it remind people what happens when silence meets consequence." Hannah appeared beside her again. "Miss Brooks, the passenger and her son are waiting by the forward door. Security has been cleared. Would you like me to escort them?" Naomi stood, straightening her jacket. "I will go myself." The cabin grew still as she walked down the aisle once more. Every passenger turned, phones lowered, conversations muted. She stopped by row 22 where the mother and son stood. The woman looked overwhelmed, clutching her boarding passes like proof of survival. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "I just wanted my son to see that people like us belong up here, too." Naomi smiled softly. "He does not just belong, he deserves. And one day he will not have to watch someone prove that for him." The boy looked up at her with wide eyes. "Are you really the boss of the airplane?" he asked. Naomi crouched slightly, meeting his gaze. "I am," she said with a gentle smile. "But you can be the boss of something even bigger." His mother's eyes glistened. The other passengers watched quietly, the moment stretching like a held breath. Naomi turned to Hannah. "Have their names logged for the mentorship program. Priority access. I want them flown to headquarters next month." Hannah nodded quickly, already typing the note. As they stepped off the plane, the jet bridge was lined with uniformed airport staff and executives who had arrived in haste after hearing what had happened. A man in a gray suit stepped forward, the regional operations director, his badge gleaming but his confidence faltering. "Miss Brooks," he began nervously, "I assure you, the situation was handled as an isolated." Naomi raised a hand, silencing him. "Do not call it isolated. It happened twice in one flight, and that means it has roots. You are here because those roots grew unchecked." The director's throat tightened. "We will retrain." "No," Naomi interrupted. "You will rebuild." Carla's voice echoed faintly from her earpiece. "Internal network is live, ma'am. The board, the staff, and every regional manager are connected. They are waiting for your statement." Naomi stepped forward until she was framed by the glass walls of the jet bridge, sunlight catching on the emblem of Airlux on the floor beneath her feet. She looked directly at the camera lens on the terminal wall. "Record this," she said. Her tone was calm, but it carried the kind of power that needed no volume. "To every employee watching, today was not a mistake, it was a mirror. If you are uncomfortable, good. That means you see it. If you are angry, better. That means you feel it. But if you are silent, you are part of it." The staff around her stood frozen, the echo of her words rolling through the hall like a quiet thunder. Naomi paused, then added, "We are not firing people to fix a brand. We are holding people accountable to rebuild trust." The boy from row 22 tugged his mother's sleeve and whispered, "Mom, she sounds like she owns the sky." Naomi heard him and smiled faintly. "No," she said softly, her gaze lifting toward the windows where sunlight poured across the tarmac. "The sky owns us. We just have to earn the right to rise in it." Naomi stood beneath the tall windows of the terminal as the meeting call connected. Screens flickered to life along the glass wall, showing the faces of Aerolux executives from every division: New York, Atlanta, London, Dubai. The air was tense, filled with the static of anticipation and guilt. Carla's voice filtered through her earpiece. "All regions online, Miss Brooks. The floor is yours." Naomi clasped her hands behind her back, posture straight, expression calm but unyielding. "You have all seen the footage," she began. "You have watched our brand stumble under the weight of its own blindness. 2 acts of discrimination in one day, under one company name. That is not an incident. It is a pattern." Her words echoed through the terminal, her reflection mirrored in the glass. The executives shifted in their seats. "We built Aerolux to represent excellence," she continued. "But somewhere along the way, we started confusing image with integrity. We polished the logo and ignored the culture beneath it. A silence fell, the kind that comes when truth finally lands. Naomi's voice softened but lost none of its precision. "We will not issue apologies written by public relations. We will issue reform written by responsibility. Effective immediately, I am launching Project Horizon, a full-scale internal review of hiring, training, and disciplinary practices across every airport, every flight, every division." Carla's voice came softly. "Confirmed, Miss Brooks? Shall I circulate the policy outline?" "Yes," Naomi said. "And add this. Every employee will complete equity retraining. Every manager will sign a personal accountability clause. Anyone caught retaliating against whistleblowers will be terminated." The regional director in the gray suit shifted nervously. "Miss Brooks," he said, "that will cost millions." Naomi turned toward him, her eyes sharp. "Discrimination costs more." Her voice cut through the line like glass through silk. "It costs trust. It costs dignity. It costs futures. And I will not run an airline that profits from prejudice." The director fell silent. Carla interjected again. "Media is requesting a statement, ma'am. They are outside the terminal." Naomi glanced toward the crowd beyond the glass doors. Cameras flashed, reporters gathering like a rising tide. She took a slow breath. "Tell them this. Aerolux will not speak today. It will act." "Understood," Carla said. Naomi walked toward the exit, flanked by silent employees, her heels clicking against the marble floor like punctuation marks to a speech that had just rewritten policy. Outside, the crowd erupted with questions, microphones extended, voices overlapping. "Miss Brooks, do you think firing the employees was enough? Is Aerolux facing lawsuits? Do you regret exposing your own staff publicly?" Naomi stopped just short of the cameras. For a moment, she looked out over the sea of lenses and faces, seeing not accusation but opportunity. "Regret?" she said softly, her voice carrying above the noise. "The only regret I have is that it took this long to be seen." A hush rippled through the press. "We are not canceling people," Naomi continued. "We are canceling indifference." A woman from a major network called out, "What message do you want to send to the world right now?" Naomi smiled faintly, the kind of smile that meant the answer was already history. "That respect is not customer service," she said. "It is humanity, and in my company, humanity flies first class." She turned and walked away, leaving the crowd stunned, the cameras still rolling, and the world suddenly seeing the sky through her eyes, a place where equality was not a statement but standard procedure. That night, Naomi sat alone in her office overlooking the city skyline. The glow of downtown lights reflected against the glass, forming a silent constellation of consequence and clarity. On her desk were reports thick, detailed, and damning. Carla stood a few feet away, tablet in hand. "We have completed the initial internal audit," she said softly. "The data confirms what you suspected. Over 30 recorded complaints of discriminatory treatment in the past year were minimized, redirected, or marked unresolved. Most were dismissed under the phrase customer miscommunication." Naomi's jaw tightened. "And how many of those employees still work for us?" "All of them," Carla replied quietly. Naomi leaned back, fingers steepled. "Then tomorrow they will learn what accountability feels like." She turned her chair toward the window, watching the air traffic lights blink across the night sky. "You know, Carla," she said after a pause, "my mother used to tell me that silence is the most expensive thing a person can buy. Because every time you pay for peace with your voice, you lose a little more of yourself." Carla nodded slowly. "You did not pay for silence today." Naomi gave a faint smile. "No, I made the world hear it." Her phone buzzed again, another update. "Miss Brooks," Carla said, glancing at the screen, "you have been invited to speak at the National Aviation Ethics Conference next month. The theme is the future of equity in air travel. The board wants to know if you will accept." Naomi considered it for a moment. "We will not wait for a conference to discuss the future. We start tomorrow." She stood, walked toward a digital wall display, and tapped it awake. Dozens of employee profiles appeared, some familiar, others new. "Send this message," she said, her tone shifting to command. Effective immediately, every Aerolux employee is required to attend an in-person forum on inclusion and accountability. Attendance is not optional. It is the new baseline. Carla typed quickly, nodding. "And for management?" "Stripped bonuses," Naomi said without hesitation. "Redirect the funds into community scholarships for underrepresented aviation students. We are going to invest in the future we claim to support." Carla smiled faintly. "That will cause some noise." "Good," Naomi said. "Let them talk. I am done protecting comfort." Her phone buzzed again this time, a message from an unknown number. She opened it and froze. It was a photo taken earlier that day. The mother and her son from row 22, standing under the large Aerolux logo in the terminal, smiling. The caption read, "He says he wants to be a pilot now." Naomi felt something shift deep inside her, a quiet sense of purpose that replaced the weight she had carried since morning. "Carla," she said softly, "find that boy's name. I want him in our junior aviation mentorship program." "Already done," Carla replied. Naomi looked back out at the city, her reflection blending with the skyline. "Today started as a confrontation," she said, almost to herself. "It will end as a correction." The clock on the wall ticked toward midnight, the hum of the city steady beyond the glass. Somewhere out there, planes bearing her name crossed the night sky, carrying thousands of strangers toward places of hope and return. And for the first time in a long while, Naomi Brooks allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, justice could fly. By sunrise, Naomi was already back at headquarters. The boardroom was filled with department heads, legal advisors, and communications executives, each one seated in stiff silence. On the large digital screen behind her, the Aerolux logo glowed softly, now carrying a weight none of them could ignore. Carla stood beside her, poised, ready. "Miss Brooks," she said, "all regions are connected. They are ready for your announcement." Naomi adjusted her blazer and stepped forward, her calm presence commanding the room. "Yesterday, Aerolux made headlines," she began, her voice steady but sharp. "But today, we make history. What happened at Gate 47 was not an isolated failure. It was a revelation. It revealed what our policies could not hide any longer, that bias lives where accountability sleeps." The executives shifted uneasily, some exchanging nervous glances. Naomi continued, "Effective immediately, I am restructuring our internal chain of command. Every report of discrimination, harassment, or bias will bypass local management and go directly to my office. No filters, no excuses, no delays." One of the senior vice presidents raised a hand cautiously. "Miss Brooks, that will flood your office with complaints. It might overwhelm the system." Naomi turned to him, her expression unreadable. "If it overwhelms the system, then the system deserves to be overwhelmed." The room fell silent again. "We will also establish an independent equity council made up of employees from all ranks, pilots, attendants, mechanics, and agents. They will meet quarterly, and their findings will be published publicly. We are done hiding behind internal memos." Carla looked up from her tablet. "The documentation is ready for your signature." Naomi nodded. "Circulate it immediately." She turned to the window where early sunlight cut across the skyline like a promise. "I built this company to move people, not to measure them. We will not just fly higher, we will fly fairer." The head of public relations cleared his throat nervously. "Miss Brooks, the media storm is still growing. Reporters are calling it the most significant equity reckoning in corporate aviation. They want a live statement." Naomi paused for a moment, then spoke calmly. "Prepare a press conference at noon, but this time I will not stand behind a podium. I will stand beside my staff." Carla smiled. "You want the crew with you?" Naomi nodded. "Yes, every rank represented. The same people the world saw judged yesterday, they will stand with me today." Hours later, the company atrium buzzed with activity. Reporters filled the space, cameras flashing under the glass ceiling. When Naomi walked in, she was not alone. The mother and son from row 22 stood beside her, both dressed neatly, both visibly moved. On her other side stood Hannah, the lead flight attendant, and even Evelyn, the young attendant who had made the mistake, now humbled, retrained, and standing to face the same public she had once shamed. The crowd quieted. Naomi stepped forward and spoke into the cluster of microphones. "Aerolux is not built by perfect people. It is built by people willing to change. Yesterday, I saw what happens when prejudice goes unchecked. Today, you will see what happens when accountability takes its place. Her words were slow, deliberate, and each one landed with the precision of a truth too long ignored. She looked directly into the cameras. To those who think this story is about punishment, it is not. It is about progress. The sky is not owned by the privileged. It belongs to everyone willing to rise. Cameras flashed wildly, the crowd stunned into silence. Somewhere among them, a young reporter whispered, "This feels like history." Naomi's eyes softened. "No," she said gently, "this feels like the beginning of it." Months passed, and the world did not forget. The footage from Gate 47 had become part of training programs, classrooms, and conversations far beyond aviation. Airlux was no longer known only for luxury flights. It had become a case study in accountability. Naomi's reforms spread across the industry like a quiet storm. Airlines began revising their hiring policies, their customer service codes, their internal checks for bias. Change did not come with applause. It came with discomfort, questions, and finally, action. Inside Aerolux headquarters, the atmosphere had transformed. Employees who once avoided eye contact with leadership now spoke freely in meetings. The new Equity Council met every month, led by a diverse group of staff who had once felt unseen. Their findings were open, unfiltered, and signed by Naomi herself. On a clear morning 6 months later, Naomi stood once again at the same terminal where everything had begun. Gate 47. The new signage gleamed under soft sunlight. A plaque had been mounted beside it. "This gate marks where silence ended and responsibility began." Hannah stood beside her, now promoted to Director of Crew Relations. "We have come a long way," she said quietly. Naomi nodded. "Yes, but the flight never ends. We just changed altitude." She looked out over the passengers waiting to board, people of every background, every story, all treated with the same calm respect. There was no tension, no suspicion, just movement. Carla approached with her tablet, smiling. "Miss Brooks, the mentorship program has expanded. That boy from row 22 is attending his first aviation camp next week." He wrote a letter. Naomi took the small envelope Carla handed her and opened it. The handwriting was still uneven, but stronger now. "Dear Miss Brooks," it read, "thank you for showing my mom and me that people can change. When I grow up, I want to fly one of your planes, and I want to make everyone feel safe, no matter who they are." Naomi folded the letter carefully, her eyes glistening with quiet pride. "Keep this in the archive," she said. "It belongs to all of us." The airport announcement echoed overhead, calling a flight bound for Atlanta. Naomi watched as passengers rose, lined up, and stepped forward with calm efficiency. Every smile from a gate agent, every respectful greeting, every unspoken acknowledgement felt like proof that something real had shifted. Carla turned to her. "You changed the company, Naomi." Naomi shook her head gently. "No, Carla. They changed it every passenger who spoke up, every employee who refused to stay silent. I just gave them permission to act on what they already knew was right." She glanced up at the departure board, where her company's logo glowed beside dozens of destinations. "The world keeps moving," she said softly. "And now, we are finally moving with it." A faint cheer rose nearby as a young trainee pilot waved excitedly at her. Naomi lifted her hand in return, a small but genuine smile spreading across her face. The sun poured through the terminal glass, reflecting off the wings of an Aerolux jet preparing for takeoff. As the engines roared to life, Naomi's voice echoed in her mind words she had once spoken to herself in the quiet after humiliation. "Dignity does not raise its voice. It raises the standard." And now, standing at the same gate where everything had begun, she finally saw those words take flight. The plane lifted smoothly into the open sky, leaving behind not just the runway, but the weight of the world that had tried to hold it down.